Hello everybody, my name's Tim Hughes. I'm the Director of Communications with the Spirit Group. Today it's my great pleasure to bring or introduce you to Marc Wiese, who's the Managing Director of Orion Wealth Managers, which in turn owns the well-known Warwick Wealth. Morning, Marc.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you guys for joining in.
Today, we're going to talk about retirement annuities, and it's a really important subject, and you're going to give us some clarity on retirement annuities, and particularly in relation to the new two-pot system. So with the new two-pot system being introduced, do retirement annuities still offer clients great value, Marc?
Well, thanks, Tim. Guys, I think what you need to understand is that there's a difference between retirement annuities and pension funds. There are similarities within the Tax Act. But, at Warwick Wealth, we focus on private clients and not specifically on corporate schemes. Corporate schemes relate to pension schemes. So for an individual looking to save for retirement, it's referred to as retirement annuity. And undoubtedly, I believe that for a lot of clients, they still could benefit a lot from retirement annuities. When you look at the tax system and the government reasoning behind retirement annuities is that they're looking for people to save towards retirement. So the government doesn't actually have to look after them after they retire. And therefore, they give you several tax advantages to incentivize you to do so. So once again, it very much depends on each client and their goals and needs and their specific scenario. But for most South Africans, undoubtedly, I think it still carries a lot of value.
Oh, that's interesting, Marc. But then let's talk about what are some of the benefits of a retirement annuity? How would you sketch these out for our viewers?
Well, these things can get quite complicated. And I think there's several factors to consider. But the main advantages, I would probably say, is tax advantages. So the first one would be, as you make annual contributions into your retirement annuity, effectively you are allowed to deduct those contributions from your gross taxable income. And that's at the top end. So in South Africa, we've got certain tax bracket, starting all the way from 18% up the way to 45%. And this would apply to the top end as it lowers your overall tax structure. So if you're paying tax and you work at an effective rate of, let's assume 30%, the saving could actually be 40 or 41%, whatever the case might be, right at the top end of that bracket. Secondly, as you invest in retirement annuity and those assets grow over time, and it's obviously a long-term investment with the goal of retirement assets, all growth within a retirement annuity is tax-free. All right, so that excludes capital growth and capital gains tax. It excludes dividend tax and several other elements around it. I think there's quite a bit of advantages long-term from a tax point of view. And then lastly, from estate planning and estate efficiency point of view, retirement annuities have a nominated beneficiary, which means effectively they sit outside of your estate, which means you don't pay executive fees or estate duty on your retirement annuity assets. And that could be very, very significant, once again, depending on each client.
Very interesting and very helpful. But Marc, like everything in life, there must be some drawbacks, surely. And are there any drawbacks to your retirement annuity before you consider one?
Yeah, well, those are the realities of life, I suppose. But I think there are a couple of drawbacks. And once again, it depends on what you're looking to get out of the investment and then your specific goals. But one of the big drawbacks, I suppose, considered a drawback, is the fact you've got limited access. So you're not able to access your retirement annuity and withdraw investments or cash out. Now, the new two-pot structure certainly addresses that, where you are able to access a portion of the assets throughout. But for the most part, the bulk of the assets can't be accessed at least until the age of 55.
Right.
Now, from my point of view, looking at South Africa, and got a lot of people, unfortunately, retiring with not enough assets to have a comfortable retirement. Yep. The fact you don't have access to those assets or full access to those assets, in my view, is actually probably a positive. Then if we look at the drawdown, so at some stage you will retire and you will draw off your retirement annuity, and at that stage it gets converted to what we call a living annuity, which means you have to draw at least 2.5% up to a maximum of 17.5%. Now those drawdowns are then taxed at your marginal tax rate at that stage. Now most individuals, after they retire, their houses are paid off, they've got a lot less expensive, maybe the kids are already through school. And because they don't need as much cash, they don't need to draw as big a salary on a comparative basis. And therefore, usually, the effective tax rate they pay is significantly lower.
Interesting, Marc. Thanks very much indeed. I think it would be helpful, though, if you can illustrate with some practical examples. If we take examples of, let's say we're earning X, how does the RA actually work? Given some practical numbers to this, please.
Yeah, sure. So, Let's take an example of an individual earning around 1.3 million rand odd a year, just over 100,000 rand a month. This individual would be able to effectively invest 350,000 rand, being the 27.5% annually, into their retirement annuity. Now, an individual like that would be sitting at around a 41% top end tax bracket. So, that's a significant number, which is effectively your internal rate of return on your cash flow during the first year. So, practically speaking, you have 350,000 rand cash flow out going into your retirement annuity, but you're getting approximately 140,000 rand back. Now, so we're talking about a net cash flow effect of 200,000, just over 200,000, to have a 350,000 rand investment for your future. Additionally, effectively at some stage you will pass away or retire, whatever the case might be. But as I've mentioned, your actual retirement annuity has a nominated beneficiary and sits outside of your estate. Now, it depends on the entire size of your estate. If you're looking at a 20 or 25% estate duty, executorship fees of 3.5%. But I would say most clients that have built significant assets are probably looking at a net 25% increase being paid to their families compared to a discretionary investment that's outside of an RA and it's taxed in a completely different way. Then lastly, once again, it depends on the drawdown rate once you effectively retire and where the South African tax tables are in 20, 30, whatever it might be years until you effectively retire. But based upon current assumptions, most clients would probably pay in the area of half the overall tax bill that they would compared to the 41%. So I think there are significant savings for clients from a tax perspective, from an estate planning perspective, but it gets quite complicated. And I think it's important for each individual to look at, forecasts and where they want to be, what type of numbers they're looking to invest, what's the effect on their cash flow now. I think that's where a qualified and experienced financial advisor certainly is exceptionally important.
So, Mark, $64,000 question to summarize in a sense is, should every South African take out an RA? Is it an option for everybody? How would you evaluate an RA on balance?
So I think a lot of individuals in South Africa work for companies that offer certain pension contributions. It's often matched by the employer, depending on how the system is structured, etc. And I think the new two-part structure has added certain advantages where individuals do tend to resign in order to access their capital. But for most of your higher net worth South Africans, I think they would benefit from a retirement annuity. If you are planning to build a significant estate for yourself, your family, etc., and I'm not talking about ultra high net worth. I'm talking about someone who works really hard, has a good income and wants to build something special for their families. I think a retirement annuity can have a significant impact in terms of their ultimate value the day they retire. So in a nutshell, no, I don't think it would benefit all South Africans, but probably most.
So given some of the complexities, the advantages and some of the questions, what's the final piece of advice you'd give to viewers before they make a decision about a retirement annuity? What would you advise them to do?
I think the South African financial planning landscape has become increasingly complicated, and probably not just in South Africa. I think it's a worldwide trend around tax acts and estate duty and estate planning, how's your will structured, all these other elements around it. So I would undoubtedly say for any individual, should be looking at and planning for their retirement, and certainly should be consulting with a specialist, someone that can look at the entire picture, their family, their children, their spouses, whatever the case might be, and put a comprehensive plan together. When financial advisors look at one element of a client's financial planning needs, it simply doesn't encompass the long-term goals. So I would encourage any South Africans out there to meet with a financial advisor, a qualified and experienced individual who knows what they're talking about, that can work out a plan that suits their specific goals and ensures that they can reach those by the time they retire.
Well, that's excellent, Mark. I mean, I've benefited greatly from this interview with you, as I do each time we speak. So just a word of thanks to you as MD of Orion Wealth Managers, the owners of Warwick Wealth. And viewers, we look forward to speaking to you again next month. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, guys.